Well, thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody to this evening's presentation for Education Program Pathways. On our talk tonight is the second of a two-part presentation on Pathways. Last time we covered Introduction to Pathways and Pathways levels 1 through 3. Tonight we will focus on levels 4 and 5. We invite you to ask questions in the chat about what is discussed this evening, and if there's time at the end, we will address as many of those questions as we can at the end of the panel discussion. Please be advised before we begin that today's presentation is being recorded. Now it is time to help me welcome our speaker for this evening, who serves as the president of Blue Jacket Club and as our District 22 admin manager, Catherine Capps.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome back to Pathways, Toastmasters Education Program. This is the second part of the Pathways presentation that I started last month, as Dan just mentioned. My goal has been to help us get the most that we can out of Pathways, out of the Pathways journey, as we go from where we are now to where we dream of being as communicators and as leaders, and even to enjoy it along the way. So today, I will start out by briefly recapping some of the more important points that I made last time, and then we'll dive right into levels 4 and 5, and finally take just a little look at how Pathways fits into the acquiring the Distinguished Toastmaster Award. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen straight away. And please feel free at any point to put any questions that you have in the chat, which is being monitored while I'm speaking. Last time we covered the introduction to Pathways and Pathways levels 1 through 3. And as I just mentioned, we're now addressing levels 4 and 5, and then Pathways and beyond. First, the path abbreviations, which are going to be useful for you to know, from DL to VC in alphabetical order, as they're usually listed by Toastmasters. These abbreviations do tend to be used a lot, and as I say, they are going to be useful to know. We looked at all 11 paths, and we started to see a little bit about what makes each one unique from the rest, and more about that in just a few moments. So I divided the paths last time into two broad categories. The more communication focused, as you see on the left, and the more leadership focused on the right, based on both their title and the kind of projects that they entail. I did a shout out to Toastmasters for offering us a really comprehensive education program. It teaches no fewer than 300 separate skills or competencies, as they call them, that are transferable to your real world. Now, I explained how these 300 competencies can be boiled down to just 5 core competencies. Here they are on the left. 1, public speaking. 2, interpersonal communication. 3, strategic leadership. 4, management. And 5, confidence. And number 5 is unique because it cannot be taught, but it's acquired in each path. I also mentioned, don't confuse these 5 core competencies with the 5 levels within a path, because they are not the same thing and they don't correspond like that. So here are the 5 levels. Level 1, mastering fundamentals. Level 2, learning your style. Level 3, increasing knowledge. Level 4, building skills. And level 5, demonstrating expertise. I showed how there are 14 projects in every path, although of course there are certain projects that require more than one part and even more than one speech. Last time, look, I went through levels 1, 2, and 3, describing each project and giving examples of what either I or others have done for them. So for today, levels 4 and 5, which each has one required project here and here, and at least one elective, plus the reflect on your path, which is mandatory in every path. And it's these two required projects right here, along with the level 3 required project, that really starts to differentiate each path and make it unique from the rest. In fact, it is really worth noting this, that if you look at the required project in level 3, level 4, and level 5 ahead of time, that will help you to choose your path, and it's going to help you to plan out your projects for the path that you're currently on. So before we actually dive into really a lot of detail on level 4, here are a couple of paths I wanted to show you side by side to show you what I mean about the required projects and how they differentiate between the paths. So here on the left, we have visionary communication, which is a more communication-oriented path. And on the right, leadership development, which is a more leadership-oriented path. So we can compare and contrast the kinds of projects they require. Visionary communication, if you look at this, you will see as you're building your skills as a communicator with vision. And the emphasis is going to be on speech writing and speech delivery in this path. So look at the required projects. We have develop a communication plan, communication, communicate change, develop your vision and communicate it. Then for leadership development, over here, it's a little different. You're developing as a leader, and these are the 3 required projects. So we have planning and implementing. That's planning a project and implementing the project. Leading your team and manage successful events. Pathways, level 4, building skills. This is the 11 paths in alphabetical order, which is how Toastmasters usually lists them. And you see the level 4 required project for each path listed on the right here. Notice that 2 paths require this same project, motivate others. Apparently, these 2 paths require learning to motivate others as something very integral to them. I'm now going to go through each one of these required level 4 projects, giving a sentence or 2 to explain them. And usually I will also add an example of how either I have tackled them or how I know somebody else has. And I'll be calling on our panel members to let us know how they tackled certain ones of those projects too. That's at the end of this part of my talk. Dynamic leadership, manage change. Figure out how you are going to manage some kind of changing situation involving other people, either within Toastmasters or in your personal or professional life, any one of those areas. You'll plan for the change, communicate the plan, and identify any obstacles. The one example I saw was a speaker talking about, it's a little funny, but how they navigated through the issues involved in bringing his mother-in-law from a different state to come and live with him and his wife, and the logistical challenges that that was going to involve and the effects that it would have on the various family members. And he claimed that the project, Toastmasters project, helped him with that whole thing. Effective coaching, improvement through positive coaching. You will develop coaching skills and then help either a fellow member or a person outside of Toastmasters through a project that you have expertise in. You'll see how you can positively affect a person and help them reach their goal. So I heard of one person who asked a more experienced club member to mentor them in impromptu speaking. They struck up an agreement to do this for a period of time. Apparently it went very well, and they had a lot of fun doing it. I think they spent 6 months on that project. By the way, if you're going to do a mentoring project like this, it's usually wise to put a time limit on it for the sake of both of you. Engaging humor, power of humor in an impromptu speech. You give 2 impromptu speeches, each 2 to 3 minutes long. The Toastmaster of the day chooses them for you, and when you respond, you have to include an anecdote related to each topic. Of course, you have no idea what the topics will be ahead of time. So I was interested to discover that you really can prepare ahead of time for impromptu speaking. And part of that is having your own repertoire of stories, of rehearsed stories that you can then adapt on the run, on the fly, so to speak. Hey, look at this. Do you like my illustration here with Mark Twain? I love it. He says, it usually takes me more than 3 weeks to prepare a good impromptu speech. I reckon he would have been a good Toastmaster. Innovative planning. You plan a project, execute the project with the help of a team. Give a before and an after speech. For example, I, for this project, organized an international wedding shower for my daughter and her fiance last summer during lockdown. We so wanted to invite family from around the country and from across the ocean. It was so cool to see their faces on the screen. Some of them were people that we hadn't seen for years, and they were talking about it for months afterwards. It was one of the people's favorite parts of the whole wedding season, I guess. Leadership development. Leading your team, you accomplish a task while leading a small group. Again, it can be in Toastmasters or outside of Toastmasters. It can be something, doing a project that promotes the greater good, like organizing volunteers for a charity, for example. It can be work related. Hey, I heard about one guy who did this project. He owned, I think it was a building company, and he realized that his nervousness when he was addressing his group tended to undermine his effectiveness and even his authority. So one day he decided, why not use one of my Toastmasters projects to address this issue? So he used this project. Apparently it went really well. He taught them about one part of a building, a house building project they had going, and used this project to help him through it. He was smiling about it, so I guess it went well. Motivational strategies and team collaboration. Motivate others. You simply create and complete a project, but there's a focus on motivation. You have to figure out strategies for how to help your team members actually want to be involved and want to keep going in the project. I saw one woman do this speech talking about a problem that she was having at work with a co-worker. Now, this co-worker was failing to honor deadlines, and he was driving her crazy. So she got an idea. Why not use a Toastmasters project to help me with this? So she apparently sat down with him, she had coffee with him to hear how he was doing, to see if she could develop a rapport with him, which she knew from this project would help motivate him to be involved with her in their work. So apparently they did develop a good rapport, and this allowed her to get more cooperation from him. So, you know, it's another win for Toastmasters, right? Persuasive influence. You design a detailed project or a plan for a project, I should say, and it's real, or I want to say hypothetical. So with a number of these projects, you don't have to have the real thing. If you really feel as if in your life you don't have a real situation that you can use, hey, you can make it creative. It can be hypothetical. That's a really encouraging thing to remember. So club members will try to throw problems at you when you give your speech and tell you why what you are suggesting as a plan for your project probably won't work. You have to listen to them and then present impromptu solutions to the problems they present. Presentation mastery, you get to do a 5 to 7 minute, no, I'm sorry. Presentation mastery, managing a difficult audience. Okay, yeah, 5 to 7 minute speech. I had so much fun with this one. Though we had somebody do this project, give the speech, and need to be interrupted by interrupters. I was the Toastmaster when he did this in our club meeting. I had to arrange for there to be a chatterer, an arguer, an interrupter, and a few other people who would mess up his speech. It was fun. I was able to make it nice and hard for him. He was an experienced Toastmaster and we knew he could handle it. Strategic relationships, public relations strategies. You create a public relations plan. Again, can be real or hypothetical. I served as a VP public relations for 6 months for a club in order to do this and created a public relations strategy for them. And visionary communication, communicate change. This is the last elective we're looking at. Imagine a change that is going to be happening for a group of people that you're responsible for, and you have to present it to them. One hilarious example of this was when a member of my club pretended that he was an international or the international president of Toastmasters in the year 2024, so 3 years from now. And he pretended that the education program was changing again and that he had to communicate the change to us. It was really funny. Okay, we're now going to look at your, I'm sorry, that was the required speeches. I think I called them electives. That was the required ones. We're going to look at the electives. These are the electives for level 4 here in this drop-down box. This is what it looks like in Basecamp. Level 4 electives, this is the 8 electives, which are all offered with each path, except where they were required. You see the ones highlighted here, here, and here. They are actually required in these paths. And so I've just covered them already. So I'm now going to just quickly explain numbers 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8. All right, building a social media presence. You learn how to use different types of online communication to create a profile. It can be for yourself or for your club. And then you talk about it, of course, in a speech. Guess what I use this for? I finally got on LinkedIn. I used this project to encourage myself to get on LinkedIn. I had a bit of a confidence issue with getting on social media. Create a podcast. You'll develop a podcast, you create your content and a cohesive program, and then you even learn how to record and upload to the internet in this project. There's a guy who used to be a member of our Toastmasters District 22. His name is Shane Purnell. Some of you probably know him or know his name at least. He was a Pathways ambassador for us back in 2018, I believe. Well, he has a really well-established podcast. So if you want to check it out, you might find that quite interesting and also beneficial. He talks a lot about how to build yourself a platform to gain visibility if that's something that you're interested in doing. Manage online meetings. So basically that's it. You facilitate either an online meeting or a webinar. These days, honestly, I think for Toastmasters now, this needn't be too terribly tricky for us, right? It's what we do all the time. One member of my club used this project to organize a rehearsal for a special club meeting that we had coming up. Q&A, you select a topic you know quite a bit about, and then you deliver a speech followed by a question and answer session. Write a compelling blog. So, and then you deliver a 2 or 3 minute speech about the blog that you can create. It can be personal, a personal blog, or it can be for your Toastmasters club even, although you have to get your VP, probably your VP education or public relations officer permission. So now it is time for me to move on to our first panel discussion. We'll have 2 panel discussions this evening. The first is going to be on level 4, and the second later on will be on level 5. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for a minute, and it would be great if we could bring up our 4 panel members. Okay, so first I would like to call on all 4 of our panel members to briefly introduce themselves one by one. So first we will start with Barb Grenade. Barb is a DTM. She's a veteran Toastmaster who is currently serving, I believe, maybe as an officer in 2 clubs, I think I saw, and has also had a lot of experience at the district level. Barb, would you please tell us which clubs you're in, how many years you've been in Toastmasters, and which paths you either completed or nearly completed?
Thank you, Catherine. I'm actually in 4 clubs, and I serve as an officer in 3 of them. I've been a Toastmaster since 2003, and my 4 clubs are, let's see, Tower Talkers, A Taste of Success, Toastmasters Unlimited, and also Pursuers Toastmasters in District 99 in Canada. That's the one I get to join without being a member of the executive. So I'm currently have 4 paths going. I'm working on 2 HPLs that will finish my effective coaching and my persuasive influence. I have presentation mastery, engaging humor, as well as I'm also doing the mentoring program because I think that's important for everyone to do.
Yeah. Thank you, Barb. Wow, that was quite the list of accomplishments, and well done for remembering the names of all your clubs.
Yeah.
Excellent. Next is Tim Marler, also DTM, currently serving as one of our division directors. Tim, would you please tell us which club or clubs you are in, how many years you've been in Toastmasters, and which paths you've completed?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, first of all, for asking me to be on this panel. I really count it a pleasure. But I belong to 3 clubs currently. Hayworth, which is the oldest club in District 22. I just thought that that'd be a little novelty to join that club. I'm also a member of Excellent Club, which I'm an officer in that club, and I'm also a member of Semi-Pro. When I first started Toastmasters in 2007, I was a member of Power Speakers in Topeka, and I transferred from there to Via Christi when I moved back to the Wichita area. Again, I've been in since 2007, so it'll be 14 years this October. The paths I've completed so far are motivational strategies and visionary communication. I just started engaging humor. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Awesome. Thank you for being here. Next, Shed Mayberry, DTM, currently serving as our club growth director. Shed, would you be able to tell us the club or clubs you're in, how many years you've been in Toastmasters, and which paths you've completed?
Yes, ma'am. Hopefully my connectivity does not cut out. But Shed Mayberry, I am District 22 Club Growth Director. I belong to 3 clubs: Manhattan Toastmasters, Cats, and the Johnson City Toastmasters. I've been in Toastmasters for, I missed all of that.
Did you say which paths you've completed, Ched? You cut out on us. Okay, let's move on to Dan for now. Dan Arbuckle, DTM, currently serving as our District Program Quality Director. Dan, would you please tell us your club or clubs, how many years in Toastmasters, and which paths you've completed?
Thank you. I'm in a Taste of Success. I'm a charter member of KUMC Toastmasters, which is my first club. We chartered in September of 14. I've completed 5 paths. I started with effective coaching, went to presentation mastery, innovative planning, engaging humor, which is a fun path. Everybody should do that. I just finished dynamic leadership. I'm about halfway through strategic relationships, and I'll probably start a 7th path here pretty quick.
Wow, wowza. So you 4 guys are quite the heroes of mine in a number of ways. I am now going to ask you all the same question, and that question is going to be, would you tell us about 1 or 2 of your level 4 projects that were especially successful or especially fun for you? Bob, we'll start with you. 1 or 2 of your level 4 projects that were especially successful or fun.
Okay, I actually want to tell you about an elective because it kind of piggybacks on what you talked about on hypothetical or real situations. And that was the managing a difficult audience. And I'll tell you why it was such a key point. Sometimes when you do a real life situation, people can get hurt feelings and they can't get into it as much as having fun. So I set up a fake situation with real difficult scenarios, and the members really got into it and felt that they could voice what they wanted to in a way that didn't come back on them, or they felt freer to do that. And we had so much fun with it. It was trying to get them to settle down and, you know, remember that this is just a project, not just something to have fun with. But I've done some virtual and some hypothetical and some pretend situations throughout the years, and I've always found a great reaction to it, particularly for newer members that may not want to voice their opinion or their thoughts in front of the more experienced members in a real life situation.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That was an interesting insight. We'll bear that in mind. Moving on to Tim. Tim, do you have any specific level 4 project that you could tell us how you did it, if it was particularly successful or fun for you?
Sure. I took one of my level 4 projects, and it was for visionary communications, and it was write a compelling blog. I made a fantastic military career without being able to write at all. So I thought that this one would stretch me a little bit. So I wrote a blog called My University on Wheels. I was able to learn about how to develop and manipulate a blog site, how to use other social medias to engage some readership that someone just going out searching would not have to look hard for. But the thing that I found out about it, it is incredibly challenging to develop content twice a week. And that was a requirement of that project. I was able to accomplish it, get the 8 posts that I was out there, but it was so exhausting. I really haven't went back to that. The blog is still out there. Someday I'll pick it back up, but it was a excellent project to stretch yourself, especially if you are writing challenge like I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is a great example, a really great example, and inspiring. I have not yet done that project myself, and I know that that will be challenging to come up with some content. Thank you. Shed, would you be able to tell us about one of your level 4 projects that was especially successful or fun for you?
I don't know about my connectivity, but I've been sending everything to Larry. So if I cut out, he can share.
Okay, thank you.
Starting out in Pathways, because Pathways new, and just to be testing the waters, the easiest level 4 that I was doing was managing online. I was already doing. I felt that was the easiest path that I did. My most funnest level 4 was managing a difficult audience under Persuasive Influence. It was fun because it was getting other members to get outside of their comfort zone to do different things. I would task someone that was quiet at a meeting, I want you to be the disruptor in the meeting today. And they was like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. Well, that is your role for today. So that was my most funnest level 4, to get others to act outside of their comfort zone. And then someone that was always talking in the meeting, I would have them be the quiet one, and you don't say anything at this meeting. So it was very hard for them to act out those roles.
Okay, thank you. Very cool. All right, next, Dan, would you be able to tell us one of your level 4 projects you enjoyed or was especially successful?
Well, it'll sound like a broken record, but it's to manage the difficult audiences. I have a tendency to involve people in the room in a speech, no matter what the speech is. Something I know about someone, something that was said in a previous speech. I always, for lack of creativity and information, I always pull from people that are in the room, and that project is designed to do that. I worked with a VP of Ed. I had no idea who was going to be what disruptor. I just gave a normal 5 to 7 minute speech and then had to interact with them as a part of it. It lets everybody in the club, or at least other people in the club, truly have a part in your presentation. It's just a very fun project. The podcast I have not done and hope to work the courage up to do, but I did participate as somebody that other people doing a project podcast did interview. It was fun being a part of it. I hope to eventually be on the other side of the microphone. But the managing difficult audiences, everybody should do that. It's just a lot of fun, and it involves the whole club.
That's right. Yes, as I mentioned, I had an experience of that project being the Toastmaster of the meeting where the speaker was doing that project. And so as the Toastmaster, you're fully involved and can, and kind of, you can get people to act a certain way. And so that was fun from the Toastmaster point of view as well. Wow, several of us have mentioned that project as being a fun one. One thing I have noticed for myself in tackling the different projects, and this is especially true probably in level 4, is that sometimes I want to do one that is going to be especially challenging for me. Now, it might sound crazy to some of you, but an example of that for me was the developing a social media presence one where I used it to get on LinkedIn. And I know for a lot of people, you're going to say, wait a minute, she used a project to get on LinkedIn. Is this woman crazy? But I've always had a problem, for a number of reasons, with putting my life out there in the general public and on social media to be seen, to be visible, and for a number of reasons, it's been challenging for me. So that was one that I was nervous about, and I had to make myself do it. And so I learned from it, and it was a sense of accomplishment to do it. But I've also found that I like to also do some projects that aren't going to be so challenging for me, but that maybe I can just take in my stride, and maybe something that sounds doable because I want to get it done, or because I've got a lot else going on in my life and I just can't take on too much more in the way of challenges and work right now, you know? So I think it's good to pace ourselves, give ourselves permission to do an easier speech or an easier project sometimes, and then also stretch ourselves at other times too. I was going to ask a second question. We have another 5 minutes now for this. Do any of my panel members have either anything else you would like to say about a specific level 4 project, or any tip that you would like to offer to anybody as they are on maybe levels 1 and 2 and 3 and looking to go into the upper levels of the path? Do you have any tips for people that might help them? Let's start with, okay, Dan has his hand up.
I was just going to say, early on in Pathways, we couldn't move around. You were stuck, finish level 1, finish level 2. Now you can move around. So if you have something coming downstream that is an elective or required on 4 or 5, even though you're on level 1 or 2, you can work on that project. It's nice to be able to apply those things that are going on in your work life or your personal life and use that to fill your projects. If we only did Toastmasters related things and we never did anything out of our clubs, we'd never get through a pathway.
That's right.
And along those lines, be a district leader and you get more opportunities to speak.
Thank you, great plug. That's right. What I'm finding is that I can do exactly what Dan has just suggested, look ahead, see how something I've got in my real life would fit in with a project that maybe down the road, like in level 4 or 5 of a path, do it, and it will wait. It will sit there in base camp and wait for you until you've done the previous levels in that same path, and then you can apply it to that level when you come to it. So yeah, you don't even have to do it all in order these days. Bob, over to you. Did you have any kind of a tip to offer to people who are still in the beginning stages of a path?
Yeah, one of the things that I do is sometimes there are projects that you happen to be at that point where it's going to take more work or more time than a 5 to 7 minute speech. And so what I have done actually is I've gone through and done a whole bunch of the electives, because you can do a lot of those and you learn something cool out of each one. For instance, one of the fun ones for me was managing a Q&A session, because a lot of people don't know how to manage it, how to end it. What do you do with those people that are, you know, Debbie Downers, the negatives? What about those people that talk and talk and talk and talk and talk? And we've all had some of those. So it's a good learning opportunity, and as VP Ed, that's what I also used it as. So go ahead and look through the electives and pick them and choose. Even if you don't use it on your current path, you know what? Odds are you're going to use it down the road, and you'll always learn something out of it.
Thank you. Excellent. Tim, did you have something that you could offer as a tip for level 4 as people come up to that?
I do. One of the things that I would say, especially for those that are veteran Toastmasters, after we completed Competent Communicator, then we would get 2 or 3 of the advanced manuals going. My tip would be just take one pathway at a time. I know that when you couldn't hop around, like Dan has already mentioned, I thought, boy, this sure would be great to have 2 paths going. That way I could just make sure I'm always ready with a speech. The 2 paths that I chose were so parallel that many times you kind of forgot which path you were in. So I would suggest get into one path, work it as it's designed. If you need to jump around, but as you work just that one path, you'll get so much more out of it instead of maybe doing 2 electives out of level 3. So the one path method would be my tip.
Thank you, Tim. And Shed, did you have a tip for us?
Hopefully my connectivity hangs in there. I'm sending Larry my comments. Just a reminder, you only get credit for that one path in the year. So just reminder on that one if you're doing 2 paths. And just change it up. As you start completing 4, 5, 7 paths, you're going to see some of the same electives. So don't do the same thing. As I go through, I'll say I've already done this. I've already managed an audience. I'm looking for something new. When I first got into Pathways, it was something new for all of us, and I was just going through to see how exactly it was going through. So I did the most easiest thing to get through the first path. Now I'm looking for more difficult things to find that challenge me as I'm looking forward. I love coaching. I selected a path that I'm currently in, Presentation Mastery, and the reason why I chose that was because as I was signing up new members, that was one of the objectives that Toastmasters kept selecting for them. So I was like, let me check this out. But I think I'm gonna pick another path because that's for me, that's for like new members. I like coaching and persuasive influence, trying to persuade people and things of that nature. So that's more of me.
Yeah, it's really fun when you see yourself growing and you realize that you're starting to choose different paths or different projects because you're ready to grow and because you have outgrown something else. And so that's fun to observe your own growth along the pathways. Well, thank you so much. And now we're going to move into the second part of this presentation, which is going to focus on level 5. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share again. Pathways, level 5, demonstrating expertise. Here again are the 11 paths, and listed on the right, we have the level 5 required speech or required project for each path. You see the abbreviation for high performance leadership here, HPL. And you see that this is the required project for 3 paths, indicated by the double asterisk. Then there are 2 paths which require lead in any situation, here and here. So just interesting to note that those 2 projects are required in more than one path. I'm now going to go through each one of the level 5 required projects. At the end, I'll be asking panel members if they have an example for us of something they did for one of these level 5 projects. For effective coaching, innovative planning, and persuasive influence, all ask for an HPL. For an HPL, you design and complete a project with well-defined goals, and you then lead a team, and you're accountable to a guidance committee as you accomplish the project. It's kind of a big deal. And then you give 2 5 to 7 minute speeches, a before speech and an after speech. You might, for example, use it to start a Boy Scout club, or that's what one person did, or organize an event for a club that's a big enough deal to require a team of people to manage it. I have someone in my club right now organizing an anniversary party / open house for this project. It's our club's first hybrid meeting. This will be the first time that we have met this Toastmasters year in person. Kind of a big deal. I'm looking forward to it. Yay, great HPL. Next, we have dynamic leadership and team collaboration, requiring lead in any situation. So for at least 6 months, so 6-month project, You take on a leadership role in Toastmasters. It can be at any level, club level, district level, as you wish, or in a different volunteer organization, or even in your career. So really broad. While serving in the role, you have to get a 360-degree evaluation done of yourself, and then you present a speech about the impact of the evaluation on you. Okay, leadership development and manage successful events. This looks like a fun event here, doesn't it? You coordinate an event and you include how to manage the unexpected, how to lead a team and create obviously a positive outcome. This looks pretty impressive. I'd like to go to that banquet. Motivational strategies. This is team building. You design and you host a team building event. It doesn't have to be at Toastmasters, but it can be. And then the idea is that you'll experience the benefits of team building, working in a team, build a sense of collaboration and trust within a team. Strategic relationships. Leading in your volunteer organization, you serve in a leadership role, either Toastmasters or outside of Toastmasters again. They have you create a succession plan for the transition after you leave your position, and you give a speech about it, of course, afterwards. Well, I've just actually recently done this exact project. I used my term as our club president for this project. As a side note, I wanted to mention that it worked out really well to do this project when I still had a few months serving in that position, because the project requires you to go back to the official Toastmasters materials on your role. So you review your responsibilities, you get a 360-degree evaluation done, so you can then apply what people are saying about you to the last few months that you're in that role. So I found that really tremendously beneficial and really fun. Engaging humor, deliver your message with humor. So this would be a little challenging, I would think. You present a keynote speech, so presumably that's a speech with meaning, with a message, but it's humorous as well. So, and you can present it in Toastmasters or outside. I do know that, I believe it's Dan has done the engaging humor speech. Maybe he'd be willing to tell us how this project went for him later. I think I'll ask him that. Next, presentation mastery, prepare to speak professionally. So this should speak to and appeal to quite a few Toastmasters, I think. All right, for this one, you actually prepare a keynote speech that you would use to convey a message as a professional level speaker. I recently did this project myself. I entitled my speech, Slaying the Giant of Intimidation. And I talked about the fears and the lack of confidence that can sometimes grow in your life when you have seeds of negative messages planted in you as a young person or as a child. And I talked about how to overcome that. Visionary communication, develop your vision. So you develop a vision for your work, for your personal life, you present it to the club, then you figure out how are you going to accomplish that vision. And you have to come back at a later date and explain how you're going to accomplish it, or how far you've come so far in accomplishing it. You know, I saw one woman doing this, doing a speech for this. She chose to use this project to address her frustration with her weight and her general bodily condition. And she had wanted for a long time to do something about it, and she claimed that this project gave her the tools to really address it on a new level and to get a new sense of freedom in that area of her life. We're now going to look at the elective options. This is how they look in Basecamp in the drop-down box there. You pick any one elective from a list of 5 or 6, depending on which path you're doing. We've covered 2, 3, and 6 there, so we've just got numbers 1, 4, and 5 to look at. Ethical leadership. You define an ethical framework for yourself. And then you organize and moderate a panel discussion. I want to tell you, I saw the most inspiring example that I can imagine of using this Toastmasters project in a real life situation. I was researching for this project, or rather for this presentation, and I was looking up this project, and I found on Facebook a panel discussion that had been posted for this project by a Toastmasters club in Florida. And what they had done was they had decided to invite some local people who were running for political office in their upcoming elections. And they used this Toastmasters project to interview those politicians to find out more about where they stood on ethical issues. It was fantastic. I mean, it was such a great example of using a Toastmasters project in a real life situation that benefited both Toastmasters and the panel members themselves. It got them visibility, of course. And the Toastmaster, who was the person doing this project, was very careful to say that, let me see, she said that, oh, she pointed out that this was not going to be a political in nature, and that the opinions expressed were not necessarily representative of Toastmasters International. So she gave that caveat. But it was fantastic. I recommend anybody looking that up. It's posted on Facebook. Then lessons learned. This project has you facilitate a lessons learned meeting for a team with which you've completed a project, and that's the key. For this project, you have to have already completed a project with a team, and then you review that project with your team. And you have to make sure that it's a productive discussion. You create a document with the ideas that you pull out of this lessons learned meeting, and then you present a speech about it, of course. Moderating a panel discussion. You plan and moderate a panel discussion. It can be on any topic that you like. It can be in Toastmasters or outside of Toastmasters. Hey, I looked at the Toastmasters official materials for this particular project. They feature a little video clip that's embedded within the materials of a panel discussion on the subject of glossophobia. I was embarrassed. I didn't know what that meant, and I'm glad they defined it. I mean, does anybody know? You perhaps do. Glossophobia, it was the fear of public speaking. I thought, how did I not know that word? And they had a panel discussion. They had a psychologist, a speech therapist, I guess a public speaking coach, and some other people on the panel to address that issue of glossophobia. It's a great example. And then finally, the last speech of every path is appropriately called Reflect on Your Path. The purpose of this project is to reflect on your growth during the completion of your entire path. You give a 10 to 12 minute speech. Don't make the mistake I made of talking about every project within your path. I thought, oh, it's a 10 to 12 minute speech. I have time to mention each of my projects. It's too much. It was overkill. When you finish each level, I wanted to show you here the certificates that you can view and you can print up. So this is from my strategic relationships path, the 5 certificates. You can, as I say, view them, you can print them all in Basecamp. So this is where you find that in Basecamp. As an example, my innovative planning path, level 2, I finished level 2. Do you see down here where my cursor is? View certificate. You click on that and it brings up your certificate. Then you can take a screenshot of it, or you can download it and do what you like with it, as I did there. Kind of proud of those certificates. All right, now a quick word about Pathways and Beyond, what I'm calling Pathways and Beyond. This shows how Pathways fits into the DTM track. So down here, we have 2 paths that you have to complete on your way to acquiring Toastmasters' highest award, which is the Distinguished Toastmasters Award. So you must complete 2 of the Pathways paths. Then besides that, of course, in this burgundy bar here, you see you either need to be a club sponsor or do the Speechcraft or Youth Leadership program. In the purple bar, it tells you you need to be a club mentor or coach. And in the blue bars at the top, you have to be a club officer and you need to serve as a district officer. Finally, there'll be the DTM capstone project and you have your DTM. But I just wanted to show you how Pathways fits in with that. These are the 2 Pathways paths that are part of the DTM track. Now it's time to stop sharing my screen and bring back the panel.
Okay, can I interject real fast?
Yeah.
That if anybody has questions, you can post them in the chat and we'll go through them.
Yeah,
So-
so thank you, Larry. So we're going to be asking the same question now of the panel that we asked a few minutes ago about level 4. So for level 5, I would like it if we could bring up our panelists again, please.
Okay, and as we're doing that, I do have one question that came up in previous panel discussion. Is Shed mentioned something about you can only get 1 credit per path per year. And the question was, elaborate on that. Was it really only 1 path you can complete in a year? Or I know there's a credit that you can only get 1 level per member per club in the DCP, but that was the only one I'd heard. So asking for a clarification there.
I think that's the
That is
clarification.
correction. Yes, correction, per club, per club.
Thank you. I was wondering about that too. That's great. Could we bring up the panel members again, please? Thank you. So my question is going to be the same. In fact, both my questions are going to be the same now as they were for our level 4 discussion. The first question will be, would you be able to tell us about one of the level 5 projects that was particularly successful or particularly fun for you? And how, talk a little bit about how you did that. And then the second question will be, if we have time, will be, could you give us any tip on completing a path? Anything specific you learned about completing a path? Any gem you want to pass on about completing the path? So we'll start this time with Barb. Barb, could you tell us about one of your level 5 projects that was especially successful or fun to do?
Thank you, Catherine. And actually, I'm going to kind of encapsulate both questions in one.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the process, I happen to pick paths that involve 2 HPL, high performance leadership projects. And the tip I have in doing them is you don't have to be in a hurry to find out what you want to do for a project. And the reason I say that, I've seen people that just rush in, oh, I can do this for a project, and you don't get as much out of it. I took my time in selecting them. And the first one, and they were completely opposite. One was a smaller project and an open house with the club, with the executive. But the other project is a much bigger project. And I don't know if it's good or bad, but I was taught back in Canada that our HPL projects had to be big. They had to be something worthwhile and manageable that you would learn from. And that is what I found is the key, is picking the project, talking to people about it. Would this work? Would this be beneficial? Who would it benefit? And who could I help with? My first HPL is a static group. The other one I'm developing now is a fluid group. There's going to be people coming in and out of this group. And so I'm going to learn more out of that project than I've done other HPLs over the years. So it's wait and find the project that really works for you and has some meaning and makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Sure, that's very wise. Tim, would you be able to tell us about some specific level 5 project that you did that was especially successful or fun for you?
Yes, Catherine, thank you. The one I'm going to talk about is leadership lessons learned. And I guess not leadership lessons learned, just lessons learned from the path. As a military guy, I'm thinking this is going to be a slam dunk. I kind of like Shed on that. I'm going to take the path of least resistance on this. But as you work through the path, you realize that there was a lot more to that. The project that I did, and Catherine, you would have enjoyed it because it was a gala and we had decorations just as fancy as that one that you had illustrated earlier. But it was for a nonprofit. And it was all seniors. By that, I don't mean high school seniors, I mean senior citizens. And anybody that's ever worked with them, this is not a bad situation. It just, they have more time on their hands. It's good. So really, you get to learn some good meeting management when you having those projects. And then we did at the end of the project, we came back, talked about it, spoke of the lessons learned from that to develop into what is now an annual event for that organization. Then I was able to give that speech to our club. And I think I've already gave my biggest tip already on doing paths, and that is just focus on one. Thank you, Catherine.
That does sound like a great project. That would have been a fun gala. And Shed, would you like to share with us a level 5 project that you did that is worthy of being mentioned now as a successful or fun one?
Yes, ma'am. Once again, it's under effective coaching. What I did was combine all of the nonprofit organizations that I'm a part of. I'm a part of the Fort Riley Retiree Council, the VFW, and Toastmasters. So what I did was about 3 years back when we first started Toastmasters, we organized a nonprofit organization event at our town center here at the Manhattan Town Center. And we got all of these other nonprofit organizations together. And it was a lot of bringing other organizations together and meetings and things of that nature. So that was my HPL for that year. And we organized this, and it started out with like 20 nonprofit organizations. Now it's like over 60. And we all set up tables in the town center, pass out information, and end up getting a free thing on the radio out of that event that we got for Toastmasters. Well, we had a table with all 3 of my events there. Once again, the retirees passing out information about benefits, Toastmasters passing out events about that, and then the VFW. And now it has grown so much. So I really like that because as you see young Toastmasters coming up, they're always looking for ideas. You know, Shed, what should I do? What should I do? I'm like, you know what? We started this thing, and now it's an annual event. So now what you can do for your HPL, you can take on this, go out and pass the word out and get more organizations, nonprofit organizations out there. So instead of recreating the wheel, you can pass it on to others and they can take it on and get it further.
Okay, it sounds as if the HPL projects are the ones that are most memorable for you so far from the things that you've all shared. Dan, would you like to tell us about one of your level 5 projects?
You mentioned the Delivering Your Message with Humor project, a 20-minute keynote. I don't know about the rest of you, but I wasn't that interested in listening to myself for more than 5 or 7 minutes. So the thought of being up there for 20 was a bit daunting. But this project came up at a time when I was unemployed. So I had to play with a resume, I had to look for jobs, I had to think about interviews, interview skills, and personally my take on interviews was that I'm entirely too honest and too old for this. But I also am not a big person on selling myself. I'm just who I am, and hopefully we all like that person as much as I like myself. But trying to be funny intentionally isn't always easy. I had material to play with. It let me do something that not only was gainful to myself, but I could find funny ways to look at it. To the honesty standpoint, most of us are able to put on our resume that we were at least one time Time Magazine Person of the Year. If you look far enough back, you can probably find that's true for several cases. Tim and Shed, U.S. military, Time Magazine Person of the Year. It sounds like a ridiculous embellishment, but have fun with things, whether they're serious or not. And I really enjoyed that project. Because I did that 20-minute keynote that was somewhat funny, I went ahead and did the other 20-minute keynote project as an elective, just because I knew I could do it and had that encouragement. To Tim's point about one path at a time, I've almost never not been doing two. I like that when I'm on levels 3, 4, and 5, I have another path that's 1, 2, and 3. But we all have to do reflecting on our path, as you pointed out. To Tim's point, if you're doing one path and you're stepping your way through it and you're not taking forever to do it, that reflecting on your path is a very good, positive, fun project. For me, doing multiple paths at once, I don't really care for the project because I have to remember which pathway I'm on when I'm doing it. So it is a good stepping through one at a time so that once you get to that final project and you're doing it the way they designed it to be done, it is a good idea.
Okay, that's great. Now we'll move on to, I'll repeat the same question. Are there any other projects that any of you have done for level 5 that you would like to speak about at all, that you think would be valuable to mention as ideas for level 5 projects? And my reason for saying this is that as I have been in clubs and been around Toastmasters generally over this last 3 years, it seems to me that many people are daunted by the fact that they will have some of these longer projects, harder projects, and they don't know what to do for them. And so I was wondering if you have any ideas for creative projects that either you or you've known other people do for level 5. If there's maybe subjects for keynotes that you've given or heard about, or for other, say for Q&A sessions, or any of those other projects that you might be able to address. Yes, Tim?
I had one that I thought was particularly interesting. It again was a project where you had to manage a team. And I put together a project that I was working on for my profession, to where we developed a whole new process of doing something. It was so great to be able to bounce that off of Toastmasters before I actually had to give that presentation to the board of how we were going to step into the next sequence of that. So it was a strategic plan to work on.
Right, excellent. Thank you. And that's a great example of using Toastmasters projects in our lives to benefit our lives, which is what I've done sometimes, for example, with that wedding shower that I was talking about. All right. Do you have Any other projects or any other tips that any of the 4 panelists who are experts tonight would like to share? Otherwise, what I will do is I will go to a Q&A and ask our audience if they have any questions they would like to ask us. But just again, panel members, do you have any other particular project that might be worth mentioning or that other people could learn from, or any specific tip on completing a path? Bob, can I ask you, do you have either any other project or any other handy tips and tricks that you can offer people for completing a path?
It's funny, I've in dealing with a number of Toastmasters lately, talking about the keynote address and understanding that there should be a message, but it's a different kind of speech. And yes, 18 to 22 minutes can be a long time. I came into Toastmasters where I previously had delivered a lot of keynote speeches because I had been a coach for 25 years in the world of football, and they always wanted to get the woman to come and talk about the man's world. But I had an opportunity to put together a speech that kind of encompassed some of the other areas.
Okay.
So how to deal with the ethical leadership part of it. And what was interesting was when I dealt with ethical leadership in coaching, it mirrored some of the situations we run into in Toastmasters, and some that you run into in church, and some that you run into in the business world. And so there was a much more integrated type speech, and people seem to get a lot more resonance with it.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes putting together the keynote is not just about you and Toastmasters, but what you've learned outside and using Toastmasters and how to best present the lessons learned.
That's great. Thank you. Do any of the other panel members have any tips for people as they complete a path, or another project they think would be worthwhile mentioning? Shed, do you have another one, or Dan? Or okay.
I would just like to say, I mean, on my 6th pathway, I'm going to end up doing effective leadership because I'll do all of these electives because there's only 6 of them and I'm on my 6th path. But just like you should always take yourself to the front of the room when you give a speech, make Toastmasters a part of your life from this standpoint. I mean, like Barb was saying, whether it's at church or at work or wherever, I mean, do a lessons learned speech in your club as a run through before you do it at work. That way, when you do it at work, you're amazing. You get that feedback like Tim was talking about. I mean, take advantage of these projects to help yourself out, help your club out. And from a helping your district out standpoint, we can see that High Performance Leadership Project comes up a lot more. Sometimes there are district opportunities to do a High Performance Leadership Project.
That's true. Great point. Well, if nobody on the panel has anything else that they need to say or would like to say right now, I'm thinking it would be great for us to move to a Q&A session for this last 10 minutes. Larry has some questions from our audience.
Yes, I have questions in the chat. The first one says, what suggestions do you have for getting people to volunteer for your HPL guidance committee? And do you offer incentives to get commitment?
I'll work for donuts. That's always a good one for me. Toastmasters typically are helpful people that want to see others do well and take joy in that. That should translate to some ease in finding people that are willing to be on that committee and help you out.
And I think with HPL, you have to have one to get your DTM, so that's a reward in itself. I know we like to offer incentives to doing everything, but to close out the DTM, you have to have the HPL. So that's benefiting that person who's helping us out and getting out there, getting your face out there.
Mm-hmm. Larry?
I agree with Dan. Toastmasters you'll learn the people that you can go and ask to help. And 9 times out of 10, if someone in Toastmasters doesn't have an other commitment, they are going to step right up and help you out. It's just such a reciprocal group in that, I guess, for lack of a better term.
I feel as if there is also an element of you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours, in a sense that we know that we need each other. So I needed help with this panel tonight. And so I asked our 4 panelists, and they're helping me out with this presentation this evening. But I know that I will turn around and want to give my services as a panel member to somebody else, or help out any of you as and when I can with some other projects. So I think there's a give and a take that we all experience in Toastmasters. It's really fulfilling to be a part of. And other panel members, do you have an answer to that question? Barb?
Yeah, interesting. I'm just putting together a guidance committee, and I'm choosing different people because it is also the opportunity for them to work together. And this is one where Shed's going to be sitting on it, but so is Fern, who's a member in my Canadian club. So they get to work together, and then I chose somebody else who has experience and a different aspect for this particular project. So who can best help? And there's even guidance. If you don't know what to pick, find a committee and they'll help you, guide you through it on what a project that you can do. So they can be a little intimidating sometimes, and it's because there's so much out there to do. But it's almost a barter system, because Shed knows that I help him so much. And then when I ask him, you bet he will.
Can we move on to the next question, Larry?
Yes. Somebody said one piece of advice they would give is that they are willing to ask for advice as they progress. There are a lot of ways to get the most out of these projects, and gathering a few opinions can help you decide what to do, especially if you feel like you are not sure how to approach a specific project. That sounds similar to what Barb just said.
Okay, was that a question in any sense?
No, that was a comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we have any more questions from the audience?
Catherine, I don't have a comment. I mean, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. When I got in Toastmasters, members like Larry and Kim, and Rob, those were my mentors of people I looked up to. Now that I never consider myself a part of the trio, never in my lifetime would I ever thought about that. But now that I am, the reason why I really push for people, for new faces, for those people to come up, is because the same way I thought 7 years ago I never would be up here, those same people should be leading the organization. Now, yes, I'm always calling on those members like Larry, Kim, to help me out, keep me in my azimuth, make sure I'm going the right direction. But we need that new leadership to step up. My thing is, when we see the same people given the same training, then we're not getting those fresh ideas for the organization. We need for people to step up. Yes, I love the people that came through this organization before me, and I'm always calling on them, but we need for new faces to step up. So that's why when I throw those emails out there and people always come back with me on things, I'm telling them 7 years ago, that was me. So.
Very good. We have time probably just for one more question, if there is one more question, or are we ready to wrap up here?
There's none in the chat.
Okay.
We can go all night.
Sure.
Larry said sure.
Yeah.
Are you ready for me to remove the spotlights so you can be
Yes.
on?
That would be fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, very good. Thank you so much, everybody, for having been here tonight, for being a part of the audience. I acknowledge that I have learned some things and got some good ideas, both from having prepared this presentation myself and also from listening to some of the comments and ideas that our panelists shared this evening. And also, I obviously want to thank the panel members themselves for sharing of their time and their expertise this evening, and for people who've been working in the background whilst I've been sharing and we've been talking. I was going to just wrap things up now and bring our time to an end. Okay. Dan, did you want to say any final words before we sign off and finish our time together?
Thank you. Well, I definitely want to thank you for this presentation and the previous presentation. Wonderful job. Terry Ann put a link to the levels 1 through 3 in the chat, as well as a comment about the base camp presentation coming up on the 19th, where we'll focus on some of those pain points of base camp itself. So please plan to join that. Other than that, check the district calendar for upcoming events. If there's something you think that we should offer, something that your club really would like, or something you think would demonstrate our skills as Toastmasters to market and bring other people into the fold, please let us know. I think that's all I have, unless Shed or Joanne. I don't see Joanne. Unless Shed has any comments.
I do not have any comments. Just I just want to support Dan. Well, support the organization, District 22. Please go out and register for the district conference. Right now, it's a little bit low, but get out there early, like we say in the military. Don't procrastinate.
Mm-hmm.
Get out there and get it on and get registered.
That's good. Thank you. I was going to mention that there will be one more Pathways presentation, just a 45-minute presentation by myself on the Thursday before the conference, along with a presentation, I believe, on how to give effective evaluations by Darren Yarborough and
Dan Jarman.
Dan Jarman, thank you. Excellent. So that will be on the Thursday before the conference. Conference is on May the 1st, and that Thursday will be the 20, I guess the 30th, the Thursday before, Thursday the 30th of, no, Thursday the 29th of April, I'm sorry. All right, so I'd like to wrap up this session for this evening. Thank you so much to all the audience members for being here, to the panel members, and to everybody else who has made this evening possible. Round of applause for everybody. Thank you.
Catherine,
Yeah.
I put a question in chat, but how will people find the link for this presentation? Like if I want to share it with somebody for the recording for today?
I don't have that information. Probably Terry Ann will be the person who could address that.
It will be created and put on our YouTube channel.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Excellent.
Great job, Catherine.
Thank you.
So Cheryl, what club are you with, Cheryl?
Oh, I'm with Blue Jacket Toastmasters. I'm a little
Okay.
prejudiced. So.
Okay.
It's a club where the action is. So.
Hey, when I see new faces, I like to get them out there.
Yeah, well, thank you all panelists for doing this tonight. I got a lot of good tips for getting through level 4 and 5.
That's good. Thanks, Cheryl. I appreciate you being here.
I'm going to go ahead and
We got
stop
your back.
the recording.
We got your back, Catherine. We got your back.
Thank you. Good to have people having your back.